Here we are at the Prairie orchard. I'm going to take you on the quick update tour. There's Sasha, our orchard guard dog. We have 2 Honeycrisp apple trees forming our gateway to the orchard. We enter the path. Going south towards Glendora Road, there's our neighbors across the street. And we arrive at the first row of apple trees. Just a couple apple trees on this side, 6 down this way in this northern row. Starting over here in our beautiful sunset, we've got the Hall apple tree, famous apple tree from the 1800s. Was thought to be lost and then was rediscovered. And we have this apple tree called Summer Buff. The sapling that was planted last fall is doing well. Another southern apple tree. This is our irrigation setup for the summer to keep the trees going. First tree on this side of the center aisle is Caville Blanc d'Hiver, French apple, dessert and cooking apple, very famous apple. Been around for several hundred years and remains very actively used in France. This tree is Ashmead's kernel, doing really well. English apple, russeted, has outstanding flavor, wins a lot of taste tests. Then we have the Esopus Spitzenberg. This is an American apple, was Thomas Jefferson's favorite apple. We got a good open form here, growing well this year. That one was from the 1700s. This one here is Westfield Seek No Further from Westfield, Massachusetts, developed around 1780. Not a very common apple these days, but none of these are. They're all antique apple trees. Next apple tree here is the Albemarle Pippin apple tree, developed, I believe, in Long Island, but became famous in Virginia, was George Washington's favorite apple tree. Cox Orange Pippin, one of the most famous dessert apples ever, thought to be one of the best, if not the best tasting dessert apple. This apple tree now has been in the ground for 10 months or so, or actually 12 months, doing well. We're going to, instead of going down the aisle again, we're going to cut south across our strip of prairie here and go directly into the next row, the south row. At the end here is Cor Pendu Plat, which is short and flat. It's the Roman apple. This is one of the oldest apples that is still grown for over 1,000 years. It's a short, squat apple that lay firmly against the stem of the tree. Very late bloomer, called the wise apple because it avoids frost. This apple tree is the Kerry Irish Pippin. It's an Irish apple. This will be our earliest apple. Here we have a really small apple tree called Celestia. This is thought to be one of America's best apples. I have a very small twig here. It was initially cut down by a gopher, and now it's growing back from a single bud that we salvaged. And it's got protection from the gophers this time. This apple tree is the Pitmaston pineapple. Falls into that category of apples called pineapple flavored apples from England. Been around for several hundred years. Mother, colonial apple, red apple, a favorite amongst the colonials. I have a little tiny bush here, hopefully it'll grow up. the Roxbury russet. This is thought to be the first variety of apple here in America, developed probably in the early 1600s. A russeted apple, great for cider and dessert eating. Across our central aisle here, which looking north shows our vineyard, and then the first row of apple trees that we looked at going across it. And we have two more apple trees remaining that are also southern apple trees. This one is called Pumpkin Sweet. It's a orange apple that has some ridges that make it look like a little pumpkin. Very sweet. Colonial apple from Connecticut that I think was sold better down in the south eventually. And the last one is the Chief Junaluska apple tree, favorite apple of Chief Junaluska, North Carolina Cherokee chief, who lived in the late 1700s, early 1800s before he was moved out to a reservation on the Trail of Tears. This is the apple tree he sold the North Carolinians as he was being forced out. It was very popular in the 1800s. It was lost and rediscovered about a decade ago by a gentleman from the south who has committed his life to finding lost apples. So there's our apple orchard. This is the south row. The north row is just coming up over that bluff, house in the background. And then we have a very beautiful sunset. Night.